So I was torn between what the world was saying to me and what I felt to be the truth for myself. It felt like an unnatural act for me reporting, although I knew that to a lot of people it was glamorous. And I started to just inside myself think, what do I really want to do, what I really want to do? And I will say this, knowing what you don't want to do is the best possible place to be if you don't know what to do.
Oprah Winfrey has billions of dollars, real political power, and a media empire that once dominated America. But at 72, inside her $50 million Montecito mansion, she still hasn't found peace. The childhood trauma of sexual abuse, her endless battle with weight, and vicious rumors keep circling, threatening to swallow the entire legacy she built. Why does the most successful woman in the world still feel like a failure deep inside her own soul? What good is all that glory if the question, "Am I good enough?" has never been answered? The answer isn't in any billionaire ranking. It lies where everything began. To truly understand Oprah, we have to go back to the unwanted little girl in the potato sack dress in Mississippi, the place where the real tragedy and the legend both started. The girl in the potato sack dress. On January 29, 1954, a baby girl was born in Kosciuszko, Mississippi. Her mother, Vernita Lee, was just 18 and worked as a maid. Her father, Vernon Winfrey, was in the military and mostly absent. The child was the result of a brief, unplanned encounter. Even her name started with a mistake. On the birth certificate, they planned to name her Orpah, after the biblical figure. But the clerk wrote it wrong, switching 2 letters. From that day on, she would be Oprah for the rest of her life. For the first 6 years, Oprah lived with her grandmother, Hattie Mae, on a poor farm. No running water, no electricity. She wore dresses made from potato sacks and was mocked by the other kids at school. Her grandmother was strict to the point of cruelty, and beatings were common. But it was that same woman who taught Oprah to read the Bible when she was only 3. Standing in front of the village Baptist church, the tiny girl recited long passages from memory, and for the first time in her life, she felt seen. At age 6, Oprah moved to Milwaukee to live with her mother. That's when everything changed. Vernita worked long hours and was rarely home. The little girl was left with the men in the household. At 9 years old, Oprah was sexually abused by her 19-year-old cousin, then by an uncle, then by a family friend. For 5 years, the abuse continued in silence. No one believed her. No one protected her. And worst of all, the little girl began to believe it was her own fault. At 13, Oprah ran away. When her mother decided to send her to live with her father in Nashville, she had no idea her daughter was carrying a horrifying secret. She was pregnant. At 14, Oprah gave birth prematurely to a baby boy. He lived only 2 weeks. For decades afterward, that was a wound she never touched in front of the cameras. The 9-year-old girl didn't cry from the physical pain, she cried because she believed she deserved what happened to her. Back then, the Bible verses her grandmother taught her were the only shelter for a child slowly dying in silence. But it was her strict father, Vernon Winfrey, who gave her the gift that would change her life. Iron discipline and a voice. Finding her voice. When Oprah arrived in Nashville, Vernon laid down hard rules. Every week, she had to read a book and write a report for him. Every day, she had to learn new vocabulary words. Every Sunday, she read the Bible in front of the church. He didn't spoil her or coddle her, but he gave her something her mother never had: structure. In school, teachers started noticing her gift with language. Oprah joined the debate team, acted in plays, and stood on stage in front of crowds for the first time. At 16, she won first place in a statewide speaking competition. The prize was a college scholarship. But even more importantly, the local radio station WVOL in Nashville took notice. They hired her to read the news. A 16-year-old black girl who had just escaped a childhood no one knew about was now speaking to thousands of people over the airwaves every night. 3 years later, Nashville's WTVF television station brought her in as a news anchor. She became the youngest anchor and the first black woman to hold that position at the station. At 19, Oprah Winfrey appeared on television for the first time. In 1976, she moved to Baltimore to co-anchor the evening news at WJZ. It was her first major failure. Baltimore audiences didn't like her style. Station executives said she was too emotional, too warm, and not professional enough. She was demoted to co-host a low-rated morning talk show called People Are Talking. It turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to her. In the talk show format, the warmth people once criticized became her greatest strength. Baltimore viewers loved the show. They loved how she listened. They loved how she cried with her guests. They loved how she shared her own personal stories on air. For the first time, the little girl who had been forced into silence finally had a microphone, and she discovered the only weapon powerful enough to protect the 9-year-old still living inside her. That voice was about to take her to Chicago, and a dying talk show was about to change the history of American television. The Empire Rises. In 1984, Oprah took over a struggling Chicago morning show called AM Chicago. When she arrived, the program was dead last in the ratings. Its main competitor was Phil Donahue, the undisputed king of daytime talk shows in America. Almost no one believed a slightly overweight black woman from Baltimore could compete with him. Within 1 month, AM Chicago was tied with Donahue. After 3 months, it had beaten him. In 1985, the show was renamed The Oprah Winfrey Show. By 1986, it was broadcasting nationally to 138 markets. And from that point on, nothing could stop her. For 25 straight years, The Oprah Winfrey Show was the #1 daytime talk show in America. It produced more than 4,500 episodes. A cultural phenomenon known as the Oprah effect was born. Any book she recommended instantly became a bestseller. Any product she praised would sell out in hours. Any social issue she brought up dominated national conversation for weeks. In 1986, Oprah founded her own production company, Harpo Productions Oprah, spelled backward. She owned her show outright, something almost unheard of for a black host at the time. From Harpo, her empire expanded into film, the launch of O Magazine in 2000, and the OWN television network in 2011. She worked 16-hour days. She slept just 4 hours a night. Every weekend was spent reading books to prepare for the next week's interviews. In 2003, Forbes officially named Oprah Winfrey the first black female billionaire in the world. But the price was starting to show. Her biological family began treating her like a personal ATM. Her mother, Vernita, constantly demanded money. Her half-sister, Patricia, sold the story of Oprah's secret pregnancy at 14 to the National Enquirer in 1990 for $19,000. Oprah only found out when the phone rang the next morning. Stedman Graham entered her life in 1986. They dated, got engaged in 1992, then called it off in 1993. They stayed together, but never married. She built an entire empire so no one could ever hurt her again. But that same empire made it impossible for anyone to truly get close to her. The higher she rose, the more her old wounds demanded to be faced in public. And she was about to pay a price the whole world would witness. The public battle. In 1988, Oprah walked onto her stage, pulling a little red wagon filled with 67 pounds of animal fat, the exact amount of weight she had just lost. The audience gave her a standing ovation. It was the moment she wanted to show the world. She was in control. But just 2 years later, she had gained every pound back. For the next 30 years, her battle with weight became a never-ending reality show. She tried every diet imaginable, extreme workouts, and openly admitted on air, "I've used food like an addiction." For Oprah, every pound gained or lost wasn't just a number, it was a mirror reflecting the inner turmoil she had never truly conquered. But her greatest tragedy wasn't on the scale. It was the betrayal of trust. In 1986, she publicly revealed on national television that she had been sexually abused at age 9. That moment gave millions of women the courage to speak out and turned her into a global symbol of healing. In 2007, she took that mission further by opening the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for Girls in South Africa. She invested $40 million and personally handpicked every student, calling them "my daughters." Then, just 3 years later, came the devastating blow. The headmistress she had chosen was accused of sexually abusing students at the school. For Oprah, this wasn't just a management failure, it was a total collapse of her worldview. The woman who had spent her life fighting for abuse victims had unintentionally brought a predator into the safest place she had ever built. When she flew to South Africa to face the girls, standing in front of pain she couldn't protect them from, the most powerful woman in media broke down. She had saved millions through the screen, but she couldn't save her own daughters under her own roof. That was the moment she realized. When your empire grows too big, unhealed wounds create massive cracks. Cracks where one person's mistake can destroy everything you've built. OWN and the near collapse of the empire. On January 1st, 2011, the Oprah Winfrey Network, OWN, officially launched. It was the most ambitious project of her career, a cable network with her name on it, co-owned with Discovery Communications. Just weeks earlier, she had announced the end of the Oprah Winfrey Show after 25 years to pour everything into OWN. In its first year, OWN lost $330 million. Ratings were so low that the press called it one of the biggest television failures of the decade. New shows had no audience. Big-name guests couldn't draw viewers. Even the Oprah brand, which had turned everything it touched into gold, suddenly stopped working. By 2013, Discovery was seriously considering shutting the network down. Oprah Winfrey, a woman who had not known failure for 25 years, was on the verge of losing the reputation she had spent her entire life building. She refused to quit. She moved to Los Angeles full-time. She showed up at OWN's offices every morning. She got involved in every decision, every hiring call, every script. She fired people, rehired others, hosted new shows herself, and personally called old advertisers. In 2017, OWN turned a profit for the first time. In 2020, Oprah sold most of her stake to Discovery for around $70 million, while keeping a smaller share and her role as producer. She had saved OWN, but the cost was total exhaustion. It was the moment the woman the world called a television superhero had to admit a painful truth to herself. She was only human, after all. People assumed that once the empire was secure, Oprah would finally find peace and enjoy her success. But the tragedy wasn't over. As the financial pressure eased, the old wounds and new battles she had buried under work for decades came roaring back, demanding to be paid. This time, the battlefield wasn't in Harpo's or OWN's balance sheets. It was in the body and soul she had neglected for so long. Oprah at 72 today. On January 21st, 2026, Oprah Winfrey appeared on The Today Show. She sat across from the host, hands resting on her lap, and admitted what the whole world had been talking about. She had stopped using Ozempic almost a year earlier. She wanted to prove to herself that she could maintain her weight through sheer willpower, discipline, and everything she had believed in her entire life. She worked out 2 hours a day, 6 days a week. She ate her last meal at 4 p.m. She went hiking. She did it all. In just a few months, she gained 20 pounds. Then she said what may have been the hardest words of her entire career. She needs the medication for the rest of her life, just like millions of people need blood pressure medicine. After 50 years of fighting her weight, after every diet, every trainer, and every time she cried about her failures on national television, the most powerful woman in American television finally admitted it. Willpower alone wasn't enough. 2 months later, a video of Oprah walking into Chloe's show at Paris Fashion Week went viral. She moved slowly, carefully, gripping the handrail with both hands. Some commenters said she looked like a 90-year-old woman. One person wrote on X, "Ozempic ate all the muscle in her legs." She later explained that she wasn't wearing her contact lenses that day and couldn't see the steps clearly. But the conversation had already taken on a life of its own. The most visible side effect showed up on her neck. The skin under her jaw began to sag and wrinkle. The tabloids called it Ozempic neck. At almost every recent public event, she wore turtlenecks, heavy blazers, or scarves. She rarely let her neck show on camera anymore. But while she was battling her body, another unexpected truth came out. In a December 2025 interview with People, Oprah admitted to a surprising side effect of the drug. She had become sober. One of her quotes became a headline everywhere. "I used to be able to outdrink everyone at the table." It was the first time in decades she had publicly acknowledged struggling with alcohol. And it was a weight loss drug, not a rehab program, that finally helped her stop. As her body seemed to betray her, another battle came from an unexpected direction. In July 2025, President Donald Trump posted on Truth Social that he was considering investigating Oprah over payments her celebrity friends received from Kamala Harris's campaign. A few months later, when the Epstein files were released by the Department of Justice, some people online began circulating a photoshopped image of Oprah standing next to Jeffrey Epstein on a beach. The photo was fake. The original man in the picture was Richard Branson. Someone had simply swapped Epstein's face in. Fact-checkers quickly debunked it. But fake news travels faster than the truth. Millions saw the image long before seeing the correction. Oprah didn't respond publicly. She turned off comments on her Instagram account for all of 2025. The woman who had spent her life giving others a voice now had to silence her own to protect herself. The 9-year-old girl who was once forced into silence by sexual abuse was, at 72, being dragged into America's biggest sexual abuse scandal, even though there wasn't a shred of evidence against her. Through all of this, Stedman Graham has remained by her side. They've been together for 40 years. They got engaged in 1992, but ultimately chose never to marry. Many still wonder why a woman as powerful as Oprah would turn down a formal wedding. In a Vogue interview, she revealed a deeply vulnerable truth. She never really craved the legal ties of marriage. What she needed was validation. For Oprah, that proposal was the ultimate proof that the little girl who had once been abandoned and felt unwanted was finally worthy of being chosen by a man for life. To her, that moment of being chosen mattered more than any marriage certificate. It was how the 9-year-old inside her healed not with a wedding, but with the belief that she deserved to be loved completely. More than 4 decades later, that belief is still the anchor keeping her grounded. At 72, Oprah Winfrey still wakes up every morning in her $50 million Montecito mansion. She still works out. She still takes the shots. She still wears turtlenecks. She still loves Stedman. She still isn't married. And in the quiet moments of her later years, she still carries the same question from the little girl in the potato sack dress. Am I really good enough? When the lights go down and the empire remains, that question still echoes off the stone walls of her multi-million-dollar home. After all the spectacular success and the scars that never fully closed, did all those sacrifices actually bring her the peace she spent her whole life chasing? From an abandoned and abused little girl in Mississippi, to building a media empire with no equal, to nearly losing everything with OWN, to age 72 facing new battles with weight, rumors, and loneliness. Oprah Winfrey's journey is a circle that never quite closes. She has conquered everything except the wounds inside herself. Her story leaves behind a hard truth. No amount of success is big enough to heal childhood trauma. No amount of money can fill the void of being unwanted. And no amount of power can silence the cry of a scared 9-year-old girl. Resilience doesn't mean you stop hurting. It means you get up every morning even when the wounds are still bleeding. What are you willing to sacrifice to achieve your dreams? And when you're standing at the top at 72, with all the lights turned off, is it really worth it? If Oprah's journey moved you, drop a comment and share the biggest lesson you took from her story. Like, share, and subscribe so we can keep exploring the deeper layers behind the legends the world thinks it already knows.